Last week we read about the rise of King David. This week we watch his fall from grace. No, he does not lose any of his power, and the small empire he built remains solid, but adultery and murder lead to incest and insurrection. The prophet Nathan frames it as the justice of God, but anyone who knows about family systems could almost predict the inevitable events. David no longer leads his army. He has his nephew Joab doing that for him. So on a sunny afternoon, David's standing on the roof of his palace and sees a woman bathing nearby. He decides that he must have her, and this afternoon of pleasure leads to David's arranging the murder of her husband and the death of their first child. One open question is whether Bathsheba was at all complicit. Did she bathe where and when she did because she knew the king would see her? Some of what people say about her sounds to me like an attempt to blame the victim. But then again, we see later on in her story that she's not above manipulation, so perhaps her husband Uriah is the only true victim in this story. I'm interested in what you think. We also see this week David's failure to manage his own family. Amnon, his oldest son, used David as a tool so he could rape Tamar, his half-sister. That's a story you never learned in Sunday school. And David failed to punish him for that, leading to Amnon's murder by Absalom. Absalom then led an insurrection against his father and cemented his rebellion by having sexual intercourse with David's concubines. Did you know there was so much sex and violence in the Bible? There are two moments when we see something of the basic goodness of David's character, though. One of those is when the priest Abiathar and the Levites brought the Ark of the Covenant out of Jerusalem so it would accompany the king. David sent them back. He said the Ark belonged in Jerusalem, and if God favored him, then he would return to the Ark. He was not taking the Ark with him. Well, he had a practical purpose, too. He also used the priests as spies to keep tabs on what Absalom was doing. The other moment was when Shimei, a relative of King Saul, threw stones at David and David's household and cursed the king. One of David's nephews wanted to kill Shimei, but David would not let him. "Perhaps the Lord has commanded him," said David. "If the Lord is merciful to me, the Lord will repay me with good." But I do want to point out, among David's final instructions to his heir Solomon, which we'll read next week, David told the new king to remember Shimei and to deal with him appropriately. This week we get a good look at Joab. I mentioned him before, David's nephew and the commander of his army. We see Joab leading David's army to victory. We see Joab putting down 2 rebellions. And we see him advising David. When Absalom's insurrection was crushed, the young man was himself also killed. Rather than rejoicing at regaining the throne, David wept for the death of his son. So all the soldiers who had risked their lives for him, rather than hearing David praise them for their loyalty, they heard him weeping, "Oh, Absalom, my son, would I had died instead of you." Joab told him difficult words. "What you are doing makes it appear that you care more for those who hate you than for those who love you. So dry your eyes, inspect your troops, and thank them for what they have done for you, or I swear by morning, not one of them will be left to you." David may not have liked it, but he took his seat and showed himself to his troops. Sometimes we have to put aside our own grief in order to attend to our duty.